how much of our parenting styles have contributed to our kids having this mental health crisis? I think as generation, I think we X, right? We've been the helicopter parents. Have we made a mistake? And how much can we rectify at this point?
I love that question. I think one thing when we ask how parents are doing, it's worth noting that parents are doing the best they can, right? All a parent's intent is to be to raise a child that is as happy and as healthy and is experiencing as much flourishing as possible. But sometimes our intentions go awry, in part for many reasons we know the research suggests that we kind of get things wrong. We assume the wrong things about things like motivation and happiness and so on. And I think, unfortunately, this generation of parents might have been doing that. You mentioned things like helicopter parenting. In fact, sociologists now use a new term for modern day parents of teenagers. Helicopter parenting, by the way, for those that don't know, is the fact that parents sometimes swoop in like a helicopter to take care of problems right after they've happened. Sociologists now say that we've moved on from helicopter parenting to what's called lawnmower parenting, where parents are kind of not even letting the problem happen. You're sort of mowing the lawn, so everything's flat and perfect and just everything is pristine for your kids to kind of walk through. And I think that leads to a lot of potential problems, right? One thing is that it means that kids can't fail as much as they have historically failed, which you might think is great, cross failure off the list for all my kids. But if you think about how learning works, all social scientists will tell you that failure is really important for learning. It's important for figuring things out. I think parenting right now and the sort of pressures of getting into a good college, getting a good job, these are economic pressures that exist outside of parenting that we need to think about. But those things have pushed parents to really be very concerned about students' academic progress and enrichment activities. How can I build in as much enrichment as possible so I'm making sure they're set for the next thing? But I think that has contributed to a lot of time famine in our young people, right? Where they're feeling overwhelmed. We're seeing that reflected in the data. I think that's also contributed to a sense that kids feel like they're only valued if the product they achieve is really good, right? They need to get the good grades and succeed at sports and so on. And so, yes, I think that with the caveat that this isn't just parents deciding this, right? These are structural forces from the outside that are kind of causing parents to do this. I think that we really do need a rethink of some of these parenting practices, both in terms of what they're doing for kids' mental health, but honestly, both in terms of what they're doing for kids' performance. I think this focus on academics and enrichment might make kids miss out on the kind of play that we know is super important for their development academically and beyond. It's allowing them to miss out on the failures that we know are super important for their development and beyond. And so we'll be talking a lot about ways that we can sort of shift some of these strategies around. And practices that parents can use to navigate the negative emotions that might come up. For example, when you have to let your kid fail or allow them to do something that you might initially think is a little unsafe, but they'll give them the experiences that will feel better. Because it's worth admitting that that's hard for parents. You care about your kids and you don't want to see them fail. But having strategies to regulate that anxiety and those emotions, I think, will be important too.